Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into AI today.
But not like the Terminator stuff or,
Right.
those crazy headlines.
Yeah, yeah.
We're going to get into how AI is impacting, like a really personal part of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
mental health.
Yeah.
So you've all been sending in some really interesting articles and discussions on
That's
this.
fascinating, isn't it?
It really is like everyone's talking about it from, tech people
Mm-hmm.
to like therapists.
Definitely.
Everyone's trying to figure this out. So let's try to unpack it together.
Absolutely.
So from what I've seen, I think there are like three big areas that are causing a lot of debate.
Okay.
First, how AI could be used to actually diagnose mental health conditions,
Interesting.
maybe even earlier and more accurately than, traditional methods.
Yeah.
And then there's this whole thing about personalized therapy,
Oh, wow.
like powered by AI.
Okay.
Is that even possible?
And then finally, like the big question.
Yeah,
The ethics and the privacy stuff.
right.
Are we really ready to just share our deepest thoughts and feelings with an algorithm?
That's a big one.
So to help us figure all of this out, I've invited an expert who's been following all of this really closely. Welcome.
It's great to be here. You're so right. This is a really complex area with so many questions, but it also has huge potential to really improve how we think about and diagnose and treat mental health.
Yeah, okay, so let's start with AI diagnostics.
Okay.
I was reading an article you sent over about how AI can analyze stuff like speech patterns
Mm-hmm.
and facial expressions
Right.
to find signs of things like depression or
It
anxiety.
kind of sounds like a sci-fi movie, honestly.
No, no.
But is it actually possible?
It might sound futuristic,
Mm-hmm.
but it's based on real science. When we're feeling down or anxious, it shows up in how our voice sounds, or our facial expressions, even our body language.
Oh, interesting.
And what's really cool is that AI can actually pick up on these super subtle cues that even trained humans might miss.
So it's like AI is this super therapy.
Reading our minds over.
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But it's super important to remember that AI is just a tool.
Right.
It's not a replacement for humans.
Mm-hmm.
The way I see it is that AI can gather a ton more data than we could on our own, and it can see patterns that we miss, and that helps us make better decisions about diagnosis and treatment.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about accuracy?
Mm-hmm.
Can we really trust an algorithm with something as important as a diagnosis?
That's the million-dollar question, and the research is still being done, but some studies have shown that AI can be incredibly accurate in identifying some mental health conditions, sometimes even better than human clinicians.
Wow.
But there are definitely worries about bias.
Yeah.
We need to make sure the data used to train these AI systems is diverse and representative. Otherwise, it won't work for everyone fairly.
Bias is such an important point.
Absolutely.
So how do we make sure that these systems are fair and don't make existing inequalities in mental health care even worse?
It comes down to how these systems are built and trained. Like if the data used to train the AI is biased, then the algorithm will be biased too.
Right.
So we have to be super careful about the data and make sure it represents all the different people these tools are going to be used for. And we also need to keep checking them.
Oh, like monitoring them?
Exactly, to make sure they're not discriminating against anyone.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Like we have to build ethics into these systems right from the start.
100%.
But even if we fix those problems, the idea of getting a mental health diagnosis from a computer still feels,
Finding impersonal.
I get it.
Maybe even a little dehumanizing.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important to make sure AI is used to make human connection and empathy better in mental health care, not to replace them.
So how do we do that? How do we get that balance between using AI to make things better and not losing that human touch?
It's about empowering both the clinicians and the patients.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where AI could help therapists process huge amounts of information and identify patterns that they might have missed and use that to create really personalized treatment plans. And at the same time, AI could create better resources for patients, like apps that offer support and guidance between therapy sessions.
So it's about making the care better and more personal.
Exactly.
That sounds a lot better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm starting to see how AI could really change mental health care in some pretty good ways.
But before we get too excited about all the cool possibilities we have, to go back to privacy.
Oh,
Like, if AI is going to be listening to us and watching our faces and maybe even looking at our brain activity,
right.
how do we protect that information?
Such an important question. We need to have really strong regulations and safeguards. We have to be very clear about who can access this data, how they can use it, and what rights people have to control their own information.
Wow, there's a lot to think about here.
Like the technical stuff and
Yeah.
the ethical stuff and
Yeah.
all the rules we need.
Definitely.
This is already so much to think about. And we haven't even gotten to personalized therapy powered by AI.
Let's dig into that after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking about how AI could personalize mental health care.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think that AI could analyze so much data and actually create a therapy plan just for you.
Right.
But I'm having trouble picturing what that actually looks like.
Okay, well, imagine an AI system that could keep track of your mood and analyze your sleep. Even look at your social media to see what might be triggering you.
Whoa, hold on. That's a lot of information.
It is.
How would that actually make therapy better?
Okay, let's say you're working with a therapist because you have anxiety. The AI could figure out exactly what situations or thoughts make your anxiety worse.
Oh, well.
And then you and your therapist could use that info to come up with ways to cope or even avoid those triggers altogether.
So instead of just talking about my feelings, I'd have all this data to help me understand what's going on.
Exactly.
That's so cool. But what about my therapist? Would I still be seeing them, or would the AI take over?
That's a question everyone's asking, and the answer is it's not about replacing therapists.
Okay.
It's about giving them better tools and information so they can do their job even better.
So it's more like AI is their assistant.
Exactly. The AI could do things like schedule appointments or remind you to take your meds. It could even suggest resources that might help you.
Well, that's interesting.
And that frees up the therapist to focus on the things that only humans can do.
Like actually connecting with you.
Right.
Yeah.
Building a relationship, providing emotional support, all of that.
Okay, I get it.
Uh.
But what about people who can't afford therapy or don't have a therapist? Could AI help them?
That's actually one of the most exciting things about this.
Really?
Yeah. AI-powered apps and chatbots could give support and guidance to people who wouldn't normally have access to it.
Because of cost or location or maybe even stigma?
Exactly.
But wouldn't those people miss out on the human connection?
Well, you're right. Nothing can fully replace talking to another person.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone who's really struggling and has no other options, even a virtual therapist could be a huge help.
Yeah, that's true.
And, it might even encourage them to reach out to a real therapist later on.
Oh, that's a good point.
Hmm.
So this isn't just some futuristic idea.
There are real AI mental health tools that people are using right now.
Absolutely. There are apps and platforms being used by millions of people.
Wow, like what?
Well, there's Wobot, which uses a type of therapy called CBT to help with anxiety and depression.
Okay.
And there's MindStrong, which looks at how you use your smartphone to see if there are any changes in your mood or behavior.
So it's really happening. It's not just science fiction anymore.
Nope.
What do you think the future of AI and mental health looks like?
Honestly, the possibilities are endless.
Wow.
As AI gets smarter, we're going to see even better tools for diagnosis and treatment. We might even have wearables that can track our mental health 24/7.
Oh, so it could tell you if something is wrong.
Yeah. And warn you before it gets really bad.
It's kind of exciting and kind of scary at the same time.
So what are the biggest challenges we need to overcome to make sure we're using AI responsibly?
Well, we've talked about data privacy and avoiding bias,
Right.
but we also have to think about ethics. People need to have control over their own data, and they need to understand how AI is being used in their mental health care.
It sounds like we need a whole new way of thinking about ethics in the age of AI.
I think you're right. And it's a conversation that needs to involve everyone. Tech people, ethicists, policymakers, healthcare providers, and especially the people who are actually using these technologies.
That makes sense. I'm really glad we had this conversation.
Me too.
I'm feeling hopeful about the potential of AI, but also cautious.
I agree.
It's up to all of us to make sure AI is used to benefit everyone.
100%. This is such a complex and constantly changing field, but the discussions we're having are super important because they're going to shape the future of mental health care.
And that future could be incredible. AI could help people live healthier and happier lives.
That's a goal, right?
Absolutely. So what if AI could actually help us predict and prevent mental health problems before they even happen?
Yeah, that would be amazing.
But how is that even possible?
Well, that's what we're going to talk about next.
Okay, so how could AI predict mental health problems before they even start? That sounds kind of like Minority Report.
Yeah, a little bit. But it's a serious area of research. The idea is that a lot of mental health conditions develop slowly, with small changes in your mood or behavior, maybe even your physical health, that happen way before you'd get a diagnosis.
So AI could pick up on those early warning signs that we might not even notice ourselves.
Exactly. Imagine AI that could look at your sleep patterns and what you're doing on social media, even how your voice sounds and your facial expressions, and use all that to see if there are any subtle changes that could mean you're headed for like a depressive episode or an anxiety attack.
That's pretty intense. It almost feels like Big Brother is watching over my mental health.
I understand that concern. And it's super important that any technology like this would have to be developed really carefully and with a lot of respect for people's privacy. The goal wouldn't be to like spy on people. It would be to give them the information and support they need before things get really bad.
So it's more about being proactive than being like Big Brother.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Imagine getting a notification from your smartwatch that says, hey, we've noticed some changes in your sleep and heart rate that could mean you're stressed. Here are some resources that might help.
Okay.
Or maybe your therapist gets an alert that you might be at risk of a relapse based on changes in your voice, and they can reach out to you.
Wow, that's amazing. So AI could not only help us predict mental health issues, but also connect us to the right help at the right time.
That's the idea. And it's not just about helping individuals. AI could also look for patterns in larger groups of people.
Oh, you mean like whole communities?
Yeah. And that could help us figure out what social and environmental things are contributing to mental health problems.
So we could actually use AI to address the root causes of mental health issues.
Exactly. AI could help us figure out which communities are most at risk, and then we could focus resources and support on those areas.
That's incredible. Sounds like AI could be a powerful tool, not just for treating mental health issues, but for preventing them altogether.
It really does have that potential, but of course there are challenges.
Yeah, like what?
Well, we've talked about data privacy and bias,
Right.
but we also need to think about things like autonomy and informed consent. People need to have control over their own data, and they need to understand how AI is being used in their care.
It's almost like we need a whole new set of rules for ethics when it comes to AI.
I think you're right. And it's a conversation that needs to happen now. And it needs to involve everyone, not just the tech experts, but also ethicists and policymakers and healthcare providers. And most importantly, the people who are actually going to be using these technologies.
That's a really important point.
Hmm.
Well, I think this is a good place to wrap up our deep dive into AI and mental health.
We've covered a lot today, from how AI could be used to diagnose and treat mental health conditions, to the incredible possibility of using AI to predict and prevent these issues before they even start. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a mix of excitement and caution.
Me too.
AI has the potential to completely transform mental health care, but we have to make sure we use it ethically and responsibly.
100%.
Yeah.
It's a really complex and rapidly changing field, but the conversations we're having are crucial. They're going to shape the future of how we think about and approach mental health.
And I'm really excited to see what that future holds. Thanks so much for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to all of you listening, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are your hopes and concerns about AI and mental health care? How can we work together to make sure this technology is used to create a world where everyone can thrive? Until next time, stay curious.